Hello all, welcome to a new series where we're going to take a deep dive into various things throughout Armada. Kind of adapted a bit from the one-off video I did on LTTs. Trying to do some deeper dives for a competitive oriented audience, or at least a group of people who want to get more competitive, who want maybe some new ideas about some ships and squads and stuff like that. I'm not going to blabber on too long with an intro, but I'm hoping to get a few of these out pretty regularly. I know I've said that about other stuff, so we'll see how that holds up. But I'm going to start today just because it is the first in line in the Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder. I'm going to start with the Assault Frigate Mk2 A. As a lot of you know, this is a ship that is very near and dear to my heart. It is widely considered one of the worst ships in the game. However, it's had I wouldn't call it a bit of a rebirth, but it's had quite a bit of tournament success over the last year and a half or so. Some of that's me, some of that's Mac, some of that's some other players who have really done well with it. But I wanted to break it down because it's a ship that I really love, and it's a really weird ship. And so maybe this will be helpful for players who don't quite understand how to use it, or maybe get some people to try it. Who knows? But we'll start with the basics here. The Assault Frigate Mk2 A is a Rebel medium. It is the only Rebel medium ship in the game. It's got 6 hull. It is can go up to speed 3 with a decent nav chart. It's got an evade, brace, redirect, double blue flak, command 3, squad 2, repair 4, with a 4-3-3-2 shields, and it is 81 points. And we're going to come back to that 81 point price tag. So back when the game came out, this was a much better ship. A, there was less stuff in the game. B, there was more of a role for a jack of all trades kind of thing. And C, the lists that the Assault Frigate was good in, and is still good in, were better back in the day. When you had Viking, and you could have a bunch of squads that never died. You could Gallant Haven used to be broken, all this stuff. But we're not going to spend too much time on the past. What is the Assault Frigate Mk2 A like now? It's not good, to put it plainly. It's not a very good ship. And the main reason for that is that it's 81 points for a ship that really does not hit very hard. So already, you're spending 81 points on something that is not really a weapon. I like to think of Armada in terms of threats. You want to have a triple threat in your lists, whether that's a bunch of squads, or that's a big heavy ship, or even that's leveraging an objective. And by itself, the Assault Frigate doesn't really do that. It's really not a huge weapon by itself. You can kind of make it into one if you invest a lot of points into it, but by itself, I mean, compare it to ships, particularly mediums in the Clone Wars, are so much better priced. You know, the Munificent, for example, the lower cost one is 70 points. It's 11 points less than the Assault Frigate for very similar, if not better, offensive output. So it's just not a great weapon. The one big thing that it does have offensively is that double blue flak. Rebels do not have much access to double blue flak, and they are a faction that has Torn Far. And Torn Far, letting you reroll those blues, any blues, is great for flak. And as I'll show in some builds later, the Assault Frigate Mk2 A does a really good job of kind of being a bit of a flak boat, or at the very least supporting squads. That's kind of what it does best. But ultimately, it is kind of a jack of all trades. And so the question then becomes, how do you leverage that? It's hard to make it into a battleship. It's hard to make it into a dedicated carrier or something. So how do you leverage the jack of all trades? Let's look at the titles, because they kind of help us do that. So the much better title is Gallant Haven. Before a friendly squadron of distance 1 suffers damage from an attack, reduce the total damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. Now this used to be to a minimum of 0, and it used to be better. But it was way too strong. And now it is, I think, a pretty well-priced card. It's still very strong, but your opponent really has to play into you to get any use out of it. So its applications aren't always, super wide. It's 8 points, which is not cheap. And it bumps up the base cost of the Assault Frigate, if you're adding this in, to 89 points, which is approaching the cost of an Onager. So I don't know if that says that this ship is way overpriced, the Onager is underpriced, who knows? But Gallant Haven is obviously, you're going to be using it with squad builds. Rebel squads are already pretty tanky across the board, and this just takes that to a whole nother level, particularly in stuff like Biggs Balls, where you can move the damage around, or stuff with Jan. where Jan can like brace 4 damage to 2, and then Gallant Haven takes that 2 down to 1, and so your generic squadron, which was just taking 4 damage, is now taking 1 damage. That's huge. That's one of the best ways to leverage the Assault Frigate is through this title. This is one of the biggest reasons to take it. The other title is Paragon. While attacking a ship you have already attacked this round, add 1 black die to your attack pool. Importantly, that black die can be at any range, so you can throw black dice at long, which is kind of neat. It's 5 points, so it's cheaper, but it's just not very good. And this card is kind of a bait for newer players, myself included. The Assault Frigate was the first ship I bought outside of the core set, and I slapped this baby on it every single time, and I got my ass kicked every single time. The main use case of this is if you're going to go with a salvo build, or you are consistently very, very good at double arcing and you feel that you need that extra damage. Now, I played Paragon for a long time on the Assault Frigate. As you guys who have followed the channel know, I took Paragon to multiple big tournaments, and in fact, I got 3rd at Adepticon and a Worlds invite with Paragon. But I kind of knew it was the suboptimal choice, and everyone I talked to was like, yeah, man, why are you running Paragon? And it's just a fun, cool card, and the art is amazing. I don't know. It's nice. It's a nice little boost that your opponent sometimes doesn't expect, and if you're going to take salvos, it can really increase the damage of the Assault Frigate, but ultimately it does not do very much, and it can sometimes bait you into putting yourself in situations that you don't want to be in. Trying to get Paragon to go off, maybe you put yourself in a risky situation and you just get blown up. So, while it can be fun, and I'll go through some builds that use it, it's just not very good, and Gallant Haven is significantly better. Now, the one thing Paragon does have is you don't have to take squads. You can put Paragon in any list and still potentially get use out of it. But let's hop into some builds here. So, first thing I want to go over is Agate on the Assault Frigate. This is something that's been very popular recently, like I said. A lot of people run her on the B, which we'll get to in another video, and that you run her as more of a carrier there, just keep it like a super tanky carrier. These builds, you're running her more offensively or more like indirect squad support. So this first build up here, as many of you will recognize, this is from my Worlds list. It's Agate with Whalix, Ruthless, Reinforced Blasters, LTTs, and Gallant Haven. The whole purpose of this is to try to leverage the Jack-of-all-trades as much as I possibly can. So you've got the double blue flak with Ruthless Strategist, and then Torn Far is elsewhere in the list. So you are able, and LTTs. So you are, if enemy squads come near you, anywhere within medium range, you can either blast one out of the sky or consistently deal 1 to 2 damage over and over and over, which is very strong in a day where we have an ace limit, because there's going to be a lot of generics flying around that really don't want to be taking 2 damage over and over. Gallant Haven also, enables that. If your squads play tight to the chest, you are in basically an unkillable tank with Agate and Reinforced Blastors and Whalix. So you can lumber up to something. You can take the fight to your opponent. If they don't want to come into Gallant Haven, you take Gallant Haven to them. And so then you bring your squads with you, and your squads stay within Gallant Haven range. You flak with the Assault Frigate, or if the opportunity presents itself, you shoot into a ship just to provide a little bit of support. But mainly, you're keeping your squads alive, and you're decimating your opponent's squad wing. That's the whole point of that build right there. Consequently, the one below it, this is a salvo build, which I think is inferior, but I think can still be viable. This is where you're assuming that Agate is on that bottom Assault Frigate there. So you're taking a salvo with Agate, and then you've got reactive gunnery to potentially use a different token. So you can salvo twice without having to discard, which can be big. And this is where you make use of Paragon. And so the way Paragon reads is that, let's say your opponent attacks you and you salvo them. Then when you attack them during your own activation, you can add the black dice. Important to note that A, you cannot add dice to a salvo attack. So Paragon does not let you add any dice to a salvo attack. And B, Paragon, the card, is specifically referring to you, the ship, not you, the player. And so it's whenever the Assault Frigate attacks something. So what you want to do basically is position yourself, kind of bait your opponent into shooting the Assault Frigate so you can salvo, and you salvo with 3 damage, and flat guns let you do it at long. Excuse me, not 3 damage, 3 dice that you can roll at any range, and you've got LTTs for the rerolls there. And then on your own activation, you're trying to have a double arc so that your front arc can be red, red, blue, black, and your side arc can be triple red, blue, black, and you can re-roll those with Ordnance Experts. That's the goal. That's the perfect world. Very difficult to set up, and a lot of experienced players just aren't going to give that to you. And now you have what's basically a purely offensive assault frigate for 124 points that, if your opponent's not going to shoot you and let you get your salvos off, is honestly not doing very much damage. You get way more damage out of like a 75-point MC30. So I don't think it's as good of a build, but can be viable in the right situation. Let's hop over then to a different way of thinking, and let's Akbar. So, full disclosure, the Assault Frigate Mk2 B is a better ship with Akbar straight up in almost every way. Because while you lose a die out the front and rear, you don't lose any dice out the side, and it's 9 points cheaper. So 9 or 8, I forget. I'll have to check. So the thing you want with Akbar, that side hull zone with a lot of reds in it, doesn't change, and so he just saved the points. Just take the B. But let's say for whatever reason you wanted the A. Maybe you feel like you need the flak support or something like that. Or you just really, really want to use this and be contrarian. Akbar is still good because you've got 3 red out the side, which becomes 5 with Akbar. And the 2 builds that are common with the Assault Frigate would be the Giga Drill, which is that first one with Intel Officer, Kagan and Sholin, electronic countermeasures, and slave turrets, which all you're doing is you are kind of toilet bowling around the outside of the board. So you only get to shoot once, and you are just lobbing shots at things, and they can't really ignore those shots because A, you've got rerolls, so you're probably going to do a decent amount of damage, and B, Intel Officer is really going to make them respect your shots. So that's a pretty popular build. The other one is a little less popular, but I think still very viable, and this is something we'll see again when we look at the Mk2 B, but gunnery teams, ECMs, LTTs. This gives you some flexibility of not locking yourself into 1 shot per turn, letting you shoot out of the same hull zone twice, and still giving you the same defensive profile. So you lose some rerolls here, but you gain a little bit more consistency, a little bit more anti-squad power, or not consistency, flexibility, and a little anti-squad power. And gunnery teams is better against multiple targets, particularly against MSU. So in this case, you can get a couple of these, trundle along, or again, toilet bowl because you're playing Akbar, and just throw 5 dice at multiple ships each round, which can really wear down the shields and hull of smaller ships. So these are 2 options for Akbar that I would consider the more competitive options. These Agate and Akbar are really the only 2 commanders that I think work great with the Assault Frigate. You can do the Assault Frigate, though, being a jack of all trades, can fit into a lot of lists depending on what you want to do. However, for the rest of these commanders here, Sato, I guess you could do weird stuff, but he's in general not very competitive. But like Garm, Draven, Leia, Riken, just better with the Mk2 B. For what those lists tend to want to do, the B is just better. It's honestly hard to justify the A in a lot of cases, and I'm going to circle back to this at the end. But Agate is really the only commander that makes use of the A in a way that is like unique and worth taking the Mk2 A. Akbar is just a bit of an afterthought if you wanted the extra dice, but not super common. Lastly, I do want to get to a full list of how you would run this. Again, this is my worlds list right here, just as an example. Running alongside an MC30, GR75s, importantly with Torn Far, and then 134 points of squads, mainly rogues. This just lets, because you don't have a lot of good squad activators, like the Assault Frigate Mk2 A itself is not a very good squad activator, so it makes really good use of rogues in that they can stay near it and they can go out and bomb and do whatever they need to do, but they still benefit from Gallant Haven and Ruthless Strategist. So I've done a whole lot of videos talking about this list and how I fly this list. I don't want to bore you with all that, but I just wanted to show an example of what a full list with the Assault Frigate Mk2 A looks like. But to wrap up, like I said earlier, there are not a whole lot of reasons to take the A over the B. The only use case that I think is really good is Agate, and that's if you're making use of all of its good attributes. It's slightly better dice. Potentially it's better salvo ability, but mainly the double flu flak. Even then, I think you really have to want to use the ship. It's, in very few cases, the optimal thing to be using, but that's the whole reason I picked it up. is that everyone says it's horrible, it's overpriced, and it is. It is overpriced. But I wanted to find some sort of build that really let it sing. That its strength is being such a good jack of all trades, and it has a couple unique attributes to the Rebels. I wanted to figure out how to make use of that, and Agate is one of the best ways to do that. So for those of you looking to try it out, I would recommend Agate. If you're going to go with a Gallant Haven build or even a Salvo Paragon build. Again, you can put the Assault Frigate in other situations. It's just the lack of squad pushing power and its lackluster dice will keep it out of other lists. But you know, the Armada community is very creative, and so I look forward to seeing how people use the Mk2 A in the future with other lists. But that's going to wrap this up. I don't want to go too long. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know. I'm going to try to work my way through all the other ships in the game. Might take me a while, and I might stop after 1 or 2 videos. Who's to say? But if these do pretty well, then I'll try to keep them going. If you guys are just really wanting me to do a specific ship out of order, I can look at doing that. Maybe we go down the line, so maybe I'll do the Mk2 B next, and then we jump over to Empire, do 2 ships, jump over to CIS, blah, blah, blah. Let me know what you guys think. But thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.